I'd like to call to order the Board of Education regular meeting, April 23rd, 2019, 7:30. And our first order is for our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you. And at this point, I'm going to turn over the agenda to Dr. Tracy for recognition.
This is the best part of our meeting for those of you who follow them, either here or on the TV. And we're going to start by asking Stella Malky to come up. I just want to say a few words. Some of you may know about the annual Scholastic Writing Competition, which is one of the oldest and most renowned essay and writing contests for creative young people in the country. And I didn't realize this, but let me name some of the names of people who have won this in the past years. Stephen King, you've heard of him, right? Truman Capote, John Updike, Sylvia Plath, and Stella Malky. Actually received 8 awards from the program this year, including 3 gold medals, and we wish her well. I think you're off to a great start.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So much.
You want to say anything? Next, we'd like Carly Lynch to come up. Carly is the first place winner in the Unified Sports Michaels Cup Essay Contest this year, so congratulations. For people who may not know, can you explain a little bit about that contest and what you wrote that gave you the winning place here?
Yes, so Unified Sports is a program where we help those with special needs in like PE and other sports. And I wrote an essay on how they have impacted my life so incredibly and positively. And yeah.
What made you decide to get involved with these other youngsters?
Well, my softball coach, Coach Holden, actually asked me to help them. And it was just kind of like a thing to do during study hall. And then I just really connected with them, and they just changed me. And it just turned into something that became passion of mine.
Great. Well, thank you. Next, I'm going to invite Annette Marcus, one of the art teachers at New Milford High School, to come up, and she's got a group of young people that she wants to recognize and honor tonight. Annette? List here, if you need right there.
I should have brought my glasses.
I can read it if you want to.
That's all right. Milford High School art students that were recognized this year for several exhibitions that we had. Isabella Baggett, Erin Hollister.
Come on up when she calls your name. We want to recognize
Erin Hollister, Chloe Honorado, Christina Honorado, Alyssa Parsons, Colleen Ryan, Julius Baracco, Emma Street, Michaela Zagarelli, and Kyle Pace. There were 3 exhibitions that these students participated in this year. The first was a juried exhibition at the Brookfield Craft Center. It was the 4th annual Artists on the Rise show. So it was a juried exhibition. They had to be allowed into the show. Some of these individuals won prizes. The second was Kyle Paste. There is the 22nd annual nationally juried K-12 exhibition, which is sponsored by the National Council on the Education for Ceramic Arts Conference. It's held in a different city each year. And this year, Kyle Paste got one of his pieces into the show. There were 1,200 pieces nationally submitted and only 150 pieces selected for the exhibition, and it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota this year. Wow. So congratulations. exhibition is at the Hunt Hill Gallery at Silo off of Route 202, and some of our students as well got into that juried exhibition.
Great, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. Congratulations. Nicely done. And finally, we have our monthly New Milford Public Schools Stars of the Month. And when I read your name, I'm going to read a short statement from the person who nominated you and ask you to come up front to receive your recognition. Hang on a second, I got to get to the right page here. This is all carefully scripted. From the Northville Elementary School, Rebecca Allen. Rebecca, come on up. Rebecca works hard every day. She is unfailingly patient and kind. Northville is lucky to have her. Next, from the Schaghticoke Middle School, Diana Beddoes. Diana. The nominator said that Diana is a positive, supportive teacher who strives to improve student performance for all students by being a lead learner. She's a team mentor and a cooperating teacher who takes the roles because she wants to help support teachers during a time of transition. They are fortunate to have such a dedicated individual to guide and help their way. Thank you. From New Milford High School, Jane Cornelis. Jane? I'm going to read the statement that was made about her. Jane is there for everyone here in the building, day in and day out. She is our go-to person in times of not being quite sure what to do. It's always Jane that we turn to with her calm demeanor and leadership. And the principal knows that more than most people. She's right outside his door every day. Hill and Plain School, Kelly Gallo. Kelly, come on up. Kelly is an amazing kindergarten teacher. Her patience is endless, and she works tirelessly to ensure that all students' needs are met. I am also thankful that she not only meets her students' academic needs, but works hard to build a nurturing, kind learning environment. Very important. Thank you. From the Sarah Noble School, Megan Lago. Megan, come on up. Megan consistently goes above and beyond for her students. She's a natural at spotting students' strengths and weaknesses and planning accordingly. I can't say enough good things about the wonderful work that Megan has done. And finally, from the district-wide team, George Osage. George, are you here? All right, well, I'm going to read the statement anyway. George is a conscientious, polite, and always willing to go the extra mile. He does anything that is asked of him with a smile. So thank you all for your contribution. Here's what we're going to do next. This is the exciting part. Mr. Lawson is going to hand each of you a little jewelry box, and I wanted also to recognize Tracy O'Connor, who's here from Ingersoll. And Tracy, do you want to explain what the little boxes are about? What's about to happen?
With a smiley face, we'll get to drive a 2019 Chevrolet Equinox for a month.
So whoever, you don't open the box yet? Each of these folks is getting a star in recognition of their star award, but one of the little boxes has a little smiley face on it. And if you get the box with the smiley face, you get this very nice automobile. And I've talked to a couple of people who've had it, and they have told me about all the features, the vibrating seats, the warm steering wheel. How are we going to manage this? Are you guys going to represent them? You're all going to figure it out. Okay.
Okay, on three. 1, 2, and 3.
Whose face is smiling? Tracy will figure out with you how you take possession of this automobile, and we're hoping you really like it, and at the end of the month that you'll buy it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nicely done.
Okay, at this time, we're going to take a brief recess. Please, if you'd like some refreshments, what we have available for you.
Teacher?
everybody.
Good.
Okay, at this time, we'll entertain public comment. Please know that an individual may address the board concerning any item on the agenda for the meeting, subject to the following provisions. There is a 3-minute time limit that is allocated to each speaker, with a maximum of 20 minutes being set aside per meeting. The board may, by majority vote, cancel or adjust these time limits. If a member of the public comments about the performance of an employee or a board member, whether positive, negative, or neutral, and whether named or not, the board shall not respond to such comments unless the topic is an explicit item on the agenda and the employee or the board member has been provided with the requisite notice and due process required by law. Similarly, in accordance with federal law pertaining to student confidentiality, the board shall not respond to or otherwise discuss any comments that might be made pertaining to students.
That's all for you, Nathan.
All right, so we're going to start out with Ms. Megan Bird.
Good evening, Megan Bird, 2 Carlson Road. I'm sure all of you are just as disappointed as I am with the Board of Finance decision to only reinstate $400,000 out of the $1 million cut by the town council, leaving $600,000 still for you all to find, most likely, if not worse than that. I'm hoping that we'll pass it. I will be honest, I walked out of the meeting thinking I really wanted to encourage my group of people to fail it, because I'm getting really tired of this, but with the new charter in place this year, I think it's still a little too risky to do that. So I sat down over my kids' spring break and spent hours, literally, going line item by line item through the Board of Education's budget to see if I could find ways that would not hurt as badly as other things. And I managed to get close. And I know a lot of you disagree with certain things that I'm about to say, but I'm going to share with you what I found and what I would like to see happen. I'd like to see pay-to-play added back in at the reasonable rate, not the 110 rate, at the 65. And I'd like to include the activities outside of the high school as well. I'm willing, as a parent that has children that participate in clubs here at Sarah Noble, to pay a nominal fee toward the stipend for that as well, and all through my kids' career. So that, I think the 65 is a reasonable number if it includes the other things as well. The Department of Instruction had a $15,000 line item for other regular ed transportation that was not in last year's line items. I'm not sure what that's for. I included that. There were a couple of line items listed as field trip transportation in both Scotticoke and the high school under certain departments only. It was only a total of $14,300 between all of those line items, but why are we paying any field trip money? The K-5 schools pay for their own field trips, either through their parents' support or through the PTOs being requested for a grant for that support. Okay, non-certified staff for interscholastics. Is that assistant coaches and things like that? I don't know what that line item is, but it's pretty big. It's $750,000 total budget in Scholastic. I'd like to see sports reduced. If you reduce the non-certified staff by flat 20%, it comes to almost $50,000. And lastly, at SMS, there are 3 grade levels that have teams, and I think that we need to look at cutting some teachers from there. They don't have even amounts of teachers, which I didn't understand. English Language Arts has 12 teachers, and math has 11, when the other subjects have 9 in each grade level, or in the building. If you reduce those teachers, that's 328 and change. And also they have 3.86 PE teachers. They're not double Sarah Noble, and we have 2. Why do they have almost double the PE staff? If you reduce just the 0.86, that's another $68,000 roughly. Thank you. And those were the things that I found that came out to just under $600,000. And I think it's time that the other schools do see a little hit, because we've hit our youngest schools quite hard for several years in a row now. And know that I'm saying this as a parent whose kids only have one more year in the K-5 system and are going to feel these effects for the rest of their career going forward. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mike Nahom.
Hi, Mike Nahom, 18 Hickory Hearth Lane, New Milford. I'm here to talk about sports participation in the schools. I'm, as many of you know, I'm on the town council. I'm also a volunteer track coach because I didn't want to take my stipend. Hopefully, get it to another person so we can have more coaches. It was anecdotally I noticed that the numbers of participations in sports in the high school seemed like it was getting lower. So I had talked to Angie Chastain about it, and she got Keith to do that actual report. And I think all of you have seen the report, and the numbers are going downhill very quickly. You know, there's numbers of reasons for it. I mean, single kids only playing one sport, pay to play. I'm sure had an effect, especially the way we did it, where it was per sport instead of one fee for the whole season. I mean, for the whole school year. Kids' schedules are full. You know, the reasons are many, and could be different reasons for it. But I always hear, well, it's happening at all other schools. I was just at a track meet today, and Joe Barlow it looked like 100 girls out there on their team, and they're a smaller school than ours. I think we have 50 this year. So it's not every school. It's, you know, something that's going on in our school, and I'd like to see if we get a committee started to look at that, and I'm volunteering to get it going and getting some, you know, coaches, some board ed members, other people in town, people that are in youth sports, whatever it takes to get together and figure out why the sports in New Milford are going the wrong direction. And so if you want to contact me, you know how to get a hold of me, and I'd love to start that. So thank you.
Good, thank you, Mike.
All right, Miss Amy Fotopoulos.
All right. You keep showing up, we're gonna learn your name.
Can you spell it?
Well, you want to give it a try? Amy Fotopoulos, 10 Chatfield Road. Is this? I don't think I need it. Okay, so like Megan, I was also very disappointed by the Board of Finance decision to only reinstate a portion of the funding that had been cut from the Board of Ed budget. I don't really know how I'm going to vote. I would like to vote no, but like Megan mentioned, I'm very concerned that the budget could get cut further. So I have been trying to think of where I would suggest looking at making cuts. I have a couple suggestions. I don't know if they're feasible, but I'll just at least share them. One of the things I've noticed being in the schools is it's really warm in here. And I don't think I'm having power surges yet. Can we lower the thermostats? Can we lower them to 65 in the winter? Would that make a difference across all of our buildings? My son participates in sports here in the evening. Half the time the doors are wide open in the winter and the thermostats are on, and I think they're in the 70s. We don't even keep our heat on 70 at home. I noticed in Connecticut state law, I don't believe that there is a temperature requirement for the schools per se. However, public buildings have to be 65. If they're not at 65, can we put them there? Another thing that having friends and family in other towns do is have parents provide school supplies for their classroom. I know for many families that may be cost prohibitive, and I understand that, but I would assume that there are plenty of families, myself included, where we would be more than happy to provide so that the burden is not on the teachers and so that we could look at some cost reduction in that area. So that I would encourage, if that's not against any state laws, is that something that we could look at as well, so we could reduce the school supply line. Ultimately, my goal is to look at other creative ways to work within a lower budget that don't involve cutting any of the classroom staff or that help us to protect as many of the in-school staff as possible. The other item that I would be in support of putting back in is pay to play. Again, my children participate in sports. It's not that I don't want to have sports. It's that if it comes down to my kids having 5 more kids in their classroom or having a speech therapist that's split across 3 schools instead of 2, I would rather my funds go as a taxpayer to keeping those resources and instead look at having to pay out of my own pocket for kids to participate in sports or theatrics or band in the high school. So I would encourage you to look at some of those other options, and please do your best not to cut the school staff any more than is needed. Thank you.
All right, and last, Miss Jessica Ryan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Ryan, 5 Southeast Trail. I didn't write anything down, and I'm not great at public speaking. But I just wanted to request, I know you guys have a tough job ahead of you, but that you not take anything away from the Talented and Gifted program. My daughter just got in this year, and she has already gained a lot of confidence and knowledge, and it's just tremendous growth already, just from this little amount of time. And I actually had the same thought about the heat. Every time I volunteer in the schools, the heat is way up. And I don't want the kids to be cold, but if it could go down a couple degrees, I know that in a house it saves a lot of money, so in schools I'm sure it would save a lot. And that was all. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to speak, even if you didn't sign up, your opportunity's here now. Going once, twice. Very well, thank you. Okay, PTO report, there she is.
Hello. The end of the school year is quickly approaching, but the PTO is still hard at work for the end of this year and already starting to plan for the 2019-20 school year. Townwide PTO raised funds for special education in all schools through the sale of autism awareness shirts for Lighted Up Blue Day. Camella's Cupboard is holding a Junk in the Trunk fundraiser this Sunday from 8 to 2 to stock their supplies for summer break lunch programs. Hill and Plain PTO has implemented a wellness room for students to utilize to de-stress. There will be sensory-friendly items available for students to use, and they are holding a family fun night featuring yoga instruction to help with relaxation. At NES, the Readathon Caterpillar grew to a total of over 3,000 segments, and the students really enjoyed this activity. NES PTO also held a spring fling to kick off spring break for the students. Sarah Noble PTO will host Fiesta del Norte, a cultural arts experience for all students. Do you need something other than flowers for Mother's Day? Scatticoke PTO is holding a Krispy Kreme donut fundraiser. Orders will arrive in time for Mother's Day gift giving.
You had us at Krispy Kreme.
The high school PTO held a Penny Wars fundraiser, which the students really enjoyed. The junior class claimed bragging rights by raising the most money. The high school PTO will also hold a movie night at Bank Street Theater for the new Avengers movie. All the school PTOs are busy planning luncheons for teacher appreciation, and Townwide is planning bus driver appreciation as well. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Craig and Elizabeth, student report, please.
First and foremost, we would like to say happy spring.
Beautiful day today. I'm sure you guys all were enjoying it. I was. Even just walking into work, I was like, the sun, it feels so good. So last night, the wind ensemble got to play alongside the West Point band, and I know Dr. Tracy was there. I saw Mr. Sugar there as well.
Yep. Ms. Baldelli was there. We had a great time.
It was amazing. It was an amazing show. I know I've heard all the band students talking about it. They enjoyed it so much. It was really great that the band parent organization was able to put that together for them. As a little onto with that, the annual Jazz Fest will be this Thursday in the high school cafeteria. That's when all the school bands come together and they play together, and it's a really fun night. There's food, it's entertaining, it's really fun to see.
On April 29th, the high school and the middle school chorus classes and groups will be coming together for the chorus festival inside the theater.
Students from the names program at the high school will actually be traveling to Scatticoke tomorrow to do a mini names program there to kind of be an interlude for the 8th graders into high school, into what they're going to see, and it'll kind of be a segue into orientation for them.
And May 1st is fast approaching, so seniors are choosing what schools they're going to and letting that weight fall off their shoulders gracefully.
And in the next few weeks, the AP exams are vastly approaching.
Yesterday was exactly 2 months until graduation. All us seniors are excited. We're getting ready.
And within the next 2 weeks are the NGSS testing, which is science.
And it's for the juniors at the high school. And that's it.
Well, thank you very
No
much.
problem.
Appreciate that. Okay. Then we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Okay, I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes, March 19th, 2019.
So moved?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? And those abstaining? Thank you.
I think, sorry, I should abstain.
2 abstentions?
Yeah, 2 abstentions.
Just
Who else abstained?
JT
JT.
and, yeah, because I just want to make sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, special meeting minutes, March 26, 2019.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Those in favor? And that's unanimous, thank you. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, special meeting minutes, April 4th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Abstaining. I wasn't at one of them.
Opposed and abstained.
I wasn't at one of them. I can't remember which one.
It's okay.
It's in the minutes. On the minutes. They're on the minutes.
Check the minutes.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Just a few items tonight. Thanks to the action that this board took late last month, Eric Williams will assume his leadership role as the new principal at Hill and Plain School on May 6th. He'll actually be moving over there next Monday, the 29th of April, for a week of getting his feet wet, meeting people, and getting oriented. And then come May 6th, he's in the front seat. So looking forward to great things from Mr. Williams. We're also moving forward with the selection of our new principal at the Northville Elementary School. Ms. DeCorporal, Ms. Baldelli, and I will be interviewing a number of candidates by telephone on April 29th to screen through a number of promising applications. And then out of that group, we'll have a smaller group coming forward to a selection advisory group on May 9. And this will include several members of the Northville staff, as well as a representative of the PTO. And we'd very much like to have a couple of school board members. So if you're interested in being part of that, if you'd let the chairman know, the meeting will take place on May 9th. And once I know from Mr. Lawson who will participate from this board, we'll get you an invite.
Do you know what time?
Who are you going to ask me that? 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
It'll be an all-afternoon event,
Usually goes till about 4 o'clock.
yeah, depending on the number of candidates that we bring to you, but if it's the typical 4 folks, it'll take several hours, but well worth the time, so. Third, as you'll see from Mr. Giovannoni's report tonight, the current year budget is on track to finish in the black, and he'll give you some more detail later on this evening. Fourth, with respect to next year's budget, the Board of Finance has recommended a total of $64,541,000 for the school district for next year. And as was mentioned earlier tonight, this is about $600,000 less than you all requested earlier in the year. But that is the number that will go to a town meeting on May 7, and that meeting will set the date for a referendum where the people will vote. We are already at work, myself and my administrative colleagues, on how we will identify the $600,000 worth of cuts that will need to be made if that budget is adopted by the citizenry, and we will be coming back to you with a recommendation once that number is final. And finally, two wonderful artistic events here. Our student representatives made mention of last night's concert, which was great, and I had a 5-year-old with me, so I couldn't make it through the whole thing. But we stayed about halfway through and saw both your colleagues, the New Milford High School group, as well as the West Pointers, and a very impressive evening. And a couple of weeks earlier, a lot of us I know showed up for the Footloose musical, and that was great. And I was just saying to Mr. Chagru as we walked in tonight, those things remind us how important the arts are for the lives of our students. The arts are not an extra. They're not a side thing that we do when we've gotten everything else done. It's part of being a well-rounded citizen and part of being a high school graduate. And these are the things that you and your fellow students will remember years from now, long after you've forgotten my lecture about American history. So I realize those were great events and something for the whole town to be proud of, and there were hundreds of people at both of them. So very enjoyable part of my experience here. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, moving on to myself.
How do you do that?
By calling me.
Right now, we're in that overlap time where we're wrapping things up at the end of the year and preparing things for next year. So if everybody would just be patient, and we'll work through this as we always do, but we're wrapping up some contracts now, finishing some negotiations, and as Dr. Tracy said, we're filling some key positions along the way as well. Simultaneously, getting our curriculum aligned and things like that for next year, and the in-services and summer school programs for to work as a bridge. I'll reiterate, the budget date has not been set. The budget vote has not been set. It will be at a town meeting later. I'm assuming it'll be sometime in May. And again, cut a long story short, approximately $600,000 less than was requested. You can look at that any way you want. Some members of the public indicated their concerns about it. I know all of us have concerns about it too. But again, I would urge you, if you have any ideas on that, to contact the superintendent's office to let them know, so that we can again work on this together as we did the first round. And that's about all I have to say. So we'll be moving on to the committee reports. And Mr. McCauley.
Okay, well, at our meeting, we had my favorite discussions. We talked about roofs and we talked about oil tanks.
Oil tanks and roofs.
I'm going to write a song about it one day.
Leave me out of it.
But our first, and they were all items of information, so there's going to be no action at this meeting. But we talked about, with the exception of, I believe, some Sarah Noble roof repairs that need to be done, which was discussed in operations. And there needs to be some masonry work and some other repairs. Even though we have to put a new roof on this building, these repairs need to be made before, because there's water coming into the building. And that funding will be coming from money that we received from the insurance settlement for the high school roof, and also some money that was put aside for a solar study. On the positive side, we talked about some scout donations, not a roof or an oil tank, and we're getting a compost bin and also some picnic tables, which is really nice, and hopefully they'll be coming before the board. Back to the oil tanks, the Lillis oil tank, I guess the additional funding that we needed for that has been approved by the town council and the Board of Finance, and that project will hopefully completed, so hopefully we won't have to talk about that oil tank, but we will in the future be talking about the high school oil tank, so that subject never ends. And also the roof for this building and the high school will also be going out to bond and hopefully be approved and worked on over the summer. And the rooftop unit for this building was approved by both the town council and the Board of Finance, and that will be repaired hopefully before the air conditioning season starts. Hopefully not too soon or ever this summer, but that's my opinion. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's my report.
I wanted to make a comment when you were finished, if that's all right?
Well, for clarification, yes.
Yeah, what I hope is my last comment about the Lillis oil tank, but I think it's important now that work has been largely completed. There's a small piece left to go, but first of all, to thank the town council and the Board of Finance for joining with the Board of Education and seeing to it that that bill got paid. Anybody that's been following that project knows that it turned out to be much more complicated and more than twice as expensive as any of us ever anticipated. But I think it's important to recall that the reason it got complicated and expensive was two pieces of reality: the ledge that was underneath the tank and the broken sewer line. Some people have speculated we could have known about those things in advance. I doubt it, but even if we had known about it in advance, those two realities would still have had to be dealt with. So it's not as if we created a problem that didn't need to be created. So with that, the work is going to get finished, and we thank everybody for helping us get through it and pay the bills.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Operations, Wendy?
Okay, so that was a large report. Facilities were kind of tied together on a lot of these things. We do have a revised Exhibit A, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions when we get to the financial components of it. And I'd like Anthony to go through some of the reviews that you can pick up in the operations minutes, but we'll go through the salary account and basically some of the shortfalls in our revenues and the areas of that per se. So the monies that Mr. McCauley was referring to, I think you'll see on a purchase resolution for in our monthly reports regarding the roof at Saranoval for those repairs. So we're pleased to have that taken care of. And I'm trying to think. We do have some revisions. We have a revised. Exhibit A, as I mentioned, and I think we also have a memo. I don't know if board members got it regarding some of the items that I'd asked for details of clarification on if there are questions prior to this evening of the professional services, tech services, lease, furniture, and fixtures of a breakdown that we had discussed at operations. As we get towards the end of the year, next month we'll be going into a little bit clearer snapshot of where we are and a little bit more breakdown of how we're going to finish out the year. I think that pretty much the usual gifts and donations, which we can't be any more grateful than we are for this community and what they donate to our schools, are on for approval for this evening. So I'll wait for the monthly reports to come up and address all those financials.
Thank you. Tammy?
We have some policies for second review coming up on the agenda tonight. 6146 graduation requirements, policy 6141.4 independent study, and 6172.6 virtual online courses, college and university courses. We had further discussion on these policies, and of course all board members will be able to weigh in later on in the evening regarding these policies and the changes that have been recommended. You can read all of the discussions that happened in the minutes. I won't regurgitate them here. Due to time constraints, the rest of the agenda topics that were on policy have been moved to the next scheduled meeting, and this has kind of been the routine for the past couple of months, so I'm really hoping that we can get to at least some of the other housekeeping items that we do have on our agenda. Or that we've had on the agenda for a couple of months, and we will have one policy for approval on tonight's agenda, which is 1323, gifts to students. And our next policy committee meeting is to be determined, right? So we're going to talk about changing the date for that. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. JT?
Thank you, David. So you'll see tonight, coming out of policy, we have 3 curricula and kind of a program as a fourth. And wanted to speak real quickly to 2 Algebra 2 curricula And I think what we should recognize too is the critical importance of Algebra 2 for advanced mathematics, not just in high school math, but also beyond. So I think it's really great that we have these two curricula to move forward for possible approval. And you'll also see honors geometry here. Something that came up in policy that we then kind of talked about quite a bit in Committee on Learning was honors geometry as a course that is an option for 8th graders to take, some advanced 8th graders in their math journey to take. So again, it's another critical importance for us to have an honors geometry curriculum that's articulated not only for high school, but also the middle school, because that can be, and what we talked about in policy was that might actually be one of the courses that then has the opportunity for some credits for students, middle school students to carry into high school. So again, it's good to have a roadmap for that curriculum there. And the final piece there is you'll see, and I thank whoever put the presentation, Alicia's presentation, is actually in your board packets for the 5-year kind of NGSS, Next Generation Science Standard, kind of game plan for professional learning. So you all have the opportunity to kind of see the look ahead. I really like that it's captured in minutes. It'll be captured in our own work here. And I think an important piece that we always come back to here is that with NGSS, it's really a fundamental shift from taking teachers telling students about science to actually having students do science, right? And I think that's kind of the easiest way to explain what is a very complex approach to science pedagogy and instruction to really trim it down to that soundbite. And I think that's important for the community to understand. And I think one of the pieces that we see is these CREC bundles. We're taking this K-8, CREC is a regional consortium, kind of like an Ed Advanced, but a little bit larger. It's the capital region, so it's the bigger RESC. It's taking the collaborative work with teachers across the state and actually giving us an opportunity to use that as a platform to start our instructional shift in district. And I think it's really important that we have something to work from. And the one really great thing is there's a number of districts in the state that are also using a similar curriculum. So I think that will help evolve and develop this program quicker. You all know this is a passion point for me, so I love to speak to it. But also, I think there's also, and I want to capture this as well, there's a really neat opportunity. While this is a complex, NGSS is kind of a complex thing, it also allows districts a great deal of flexibility. And what I mean by that is the opportunity for how do you teach the science in the sense that maybe there's a locally based phenomenon we could use for instructional units in K-8 or even K-12, honestly, right? Partnering maybe with Pratt or partnering with some of our other community resources to actually look at some neat phenomenon. So I would encourage, while we have the correct bundled units you'll see here, we also have some flexibility in where we go. And another asset that we have here in district is a really well-trained staff, and you'll see the plan here is to continue to develop staff as we advance through the next 5 years. So this is a long kind of journey for us to get to implementation in district and across the state, honestly. And one of the signals will be I think even the student reps spoke to it, the NGSS test in 11th grade, 8th grade, and 5th grade. And that will be for the board moving forward. How do our students perform on that? How can we then use those signals from that test for us to then say, what are we doing that's working? What are we doing that we can evolve? And what can we improve upon? So that's, I know it's long-winded, but I just want to kind of give you the balcony view of where both the math and the science pieces that we have for approval tonight. Thank you, David, for indulging me. I yield any remaining time to you.
And at Advance, Eileen?
In advance, okay, the most recent newsletter came out. You can read it online if you're interested, but as I go through it, I'm just amazed, always impressed with the number of different places they have their fingers in the northwestern part of this state, so it's very impressive. And with that, I'll kind of bounce the ball down to Anthony there. Hi, Anthony. The Chromebook that Ed Advance does as a consortium is coming up soon. So how can we order? Do we know how much we can order?
We can do that part later.
Okay.
It's just a report right now.
Okay, so that's where I am with that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Cade, Connecticut Boards of Education. Okay, during this legislative session, CABE, as along with CAPS, are very, very heavily involved in lobbying for the benefit of school districts. For example, the idea of teacher retirement board payments coming from municipalities such as New Milford, that is off the table, okay? That is not even discussed, barely even made it to committee. But we still have issues about monies that do come to school districts throughout the state. And, you know, we always are speaking about ECS monies and special ed monies, which, you know, we've never been funded since the laws were enacted. And that's the other thing that CABE and CAPS are really pushing, is the unfunded mandates. You know, you want to mandate it, that's great, but someone's got to pay for it, and we're tired of asking our community residents. So that's where we're at there. A lot of developments very quickly on that, so let's hope for the best. And with that being said, Magnet School.
Nothing in Magnet School. They do their once a year meeting, and it's been a while.
Okay. Moving on for discussion and possible action items. I need a motion to approve Exhibit A, personnel certified, non-certified appointments, resignations, and leaves of absences as of April 23rd, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
This is the revised that I mentioned.
Yeah, could I see it? Because I do have a question on the
Do you have, okay.
old one.
I hope I'm giving you the revised one. I don't know how to. Ellie, is it marked, is the revised one marked in?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is, as of April 12th.
It's the second name on the
number
first
2.
page, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was
Okay,
added.
I had a question on the first page, the first personnel, and then turning the page, the last page.
Yes.
Can you explain how that works?
Yes, this is a person who's on leave for the year, and then when the leave changes from medical to unpaid days, it goes on for approval for unpaid, but this person's going to be resigning at the end of this year. That's why the name's on the first
Gotcha,
page.
thank you. That's a new one on me.
We've
New
always,
one on me.
we've always done that. Have we done it always?
I think, yes, we have, and I think what you might be referring to is that probably the first time both of
The
that has
timing,
happened at
right.
the same thing.
Right, yes, that's what I was,
No, I didn't mean that.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other further discussion? Those in favor? And opposed?
That was unanimous.
It's going to rain.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Okay, and moving on. I need a motion to approve monthly reports. Budget position dated March 31, 2019. Revised purchase resolution D721 and revised request for budget transfers.
So moved.
Second?
May I speak to that?
Absolutely.
Perhaps we could break down each one with a
Thank
just
you.
quick overview. We have some changes here, and really for much of this is usual for transparency, and I'd just like to make sure that
Thank
we're all
you.
on the same page here. So Anthony, perhaps if you can read from the minutes, if we're taking a look at the budget position dated, it's a snapshot of where we are. And I didn't know if you wanted to give it a question. I myself just had a quick clarification question. Page 4 of 4, capital reserve, that's based on the March total, that number's changed?
Yes. So on capital reserve, the updated number in the account right now, as of today, the 23rd of April, is $770,184.21.
And that's reflective on, based on the action that we just had.
Correct. So the difference between the March report dated March 31st in front of you and the number I just gave you was Town Council and Board of Finance both agreed, and Town Finance deposited the security money that we got for the grant. There was one interest payment for the account in March. Then we pulled out money for the Lillis oil tank, and we also pulled out money for the rooftop air conditioning unit for this building.
I appreciate that. I wanted that to be clear, because when you look at this number, there's been a lot that's happened since March 31st. And we've also,
It's only changed by
and
about
and those numbers
40,000.
really are reflective of some projects, the security strand we've been looking at, we've been trying to keep an eye on that, and obviously the projects that we funded through that.
Yep, so next month you're gonna see it only changed by $40,000.
Right.
It's just falling back, so there's lots of items that took quite a while to get through that happened during that time period.
That is an understatement.
Any-
Budget position.
Any other questions or comments?
I think we should make that even bigger. There's so much space here.
I'm not saying anything.
Can I
You
just
know how I
make a
am about funds.
clarification? Again, based on the minutes from operations, we're looking where we are. We always look back at this point in time where we were last year at this time. Obviously, our goal is to finish above, and we know that we're going to do that. We're down significantly in the certified salary account. Board
Yeah.
members need to be apprised of that. And we also had approximately a reduction of $134,000 in excess costs. Is that fair to say?
Correct, yes. Last month, we had, at the March meeting, we had an update on excess cost reflecting the first payment that came in February, and projecting out, we are showing that item will be $121,000 roughly short at the end of the fiscal year. But there are always sometimes changes to that May payment. But if everything holds as it is now, based on the payment received in February, and we lay in the May payment, we're going to be $121,000 short in that revenue line item.
In which we absorb, obviously, in our operation budget.
Correct.
So, just to be clear.
And next month, we'll have a full year-end projection provided alongside the budget position. And I think in your packet updated, you got in operations, there were certain line items that were requested breakouts for, basically ahead of time, ahead of the full projection. So if you guys have any questions on those, we can.
I appreciate that. Those are the ones that I asked for of the 53-200 and all that series.
Yeah, there were
And
4
they were
different
sent.
ones.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Okay, gifts and donations. I need a motion to accept gifts and donations, the PTO, Exhibit B, in the amount of $20,569.99. I'll make that motion.
A second.
Fantastic. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. And it's wonderful to have such a supportive PTO in our community, and it just helps all our programs and all our kids. Okay, those in favor? Great, thank you. I need a motion to approve the following curricula: CP Algebra 2, Honors Algebra 2, Honors Geometry, and GSS CREC bundles for K-8 Science.
So moved.
Oh,
I'll second.
second, any discussion? I think Mr. Shem kind of covered those rather well. Thank you. Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And thanks to Mr. Corpo for shepherding all this through. This is the tiny tip of the iceberg when it comes to getting this work done, so thank you, Alicia.
Okay, and as Tammy mentioned earlier, I need a motion to approve the following policy: 1323, gifts to students.
So moved.
Second. I'll defer.
Any discussion? Had a couple of whacks at this already. Okay, those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And we have policies for second review. 6146, graduation requirements. 6141.4, independent study. And 6172.6, the virtual online college and university courses, as Tammy reported. Any discussion on the second review of these policies? Joe?
I'm sorry I didn't make the last meeting. On the graduation requirements, the changes, I've read through them, and I actually like what I see. I like the changes. I think it's bringing us into the future. I think it diversifies the learning process. I will agree with Ms. Chastain, transferring 3 credits up to the high school concerns me. Somewhat by personal experience. Just, my daughter goes to school about 2-3 hours a day now, entire last half of the year. Now, she works and all that, which is great, but we're pushing we're gonna free up, it may be right, there may be students don't have to take anything in the last year. If they get 3 there and they push a little bit in the early years, that concerns me a bit. On free time for too many of our students. Sometime, if they've earned it and they want that free time, and a lot of our students work, that's fine. But I like the graduation requirements. I do have trouble with giving them credit for work not being done in high school. The other thing I like, because we're moving into the new millennium here, or a new century, is online courses. Not too many of them. You can't stay home and do your entire high school.
Well, we'll be doing that policy next.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead. But
Yeah.
anyhow, I'm very pleased to see, I actually like this new program we're looking at. It's a big change, I've got that, but I think it's a positive one.
And I'll see you about the mastery-based credits, because I know that's confusing, and you've already explained it to me once, so obviously.
Well, I'll piggyback on that, because as you mentioned at the first time, I'm not exactly there yet. We've had this conversation briefly.
Or if we could just,
We'll get there.
yeah.
We'll get there. That's why I assume this is on for second review. This comes back to policy. We'll go through it again, and then the time frame to bring it forward to the board is?
We're hopeful they can be on the next board meeting's agenda so that we can move forward with starting to communicate
summer,
to
yeah.
parents of 8th grade students, incoming 9th graders for next year, that these are
The
policy
expectations,
changes. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
And I mentioned that at the initial policy, that I would urge board members, parents, everyone to really dig in and see what we're discussing here, because it is a bit of a shift. And we want to make sure that we have all of our questions answered. So if we contact you privately, because a lot of policy is going on for a long time, because we're so engrossed in some of these questions,
Absolutely.
as we should be.
Feel free to do that.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I do have the middle school credit information that was requested
Okay.
out of our subcommittee meeting, so I can pass that around so we can see
Great.
where other districts stand in the area.
Well, that's good to know.
JT?
Thanks, David. Just one question I have for Alicia. The 1742 is Public Act 1742.
Yes.
Any movement that's not happening, or this train has left the station, it's going to happen?
So I was able to take a look at the final legislation, proposed legislation going into the session in this last month. This legislation is not mentioned anywhere on the docket. So it is not going to come up. It is going to go through, and it will be in full effect for the class of 2023.
Okay, can I follow up then to that, David? To Joe's point, I think there's an issue that we brought up in policy, and I'm sorry for missing the last meeting, but I know in policy we spoke to this too. The 3 credits that could come up from the middle school, we purposely, and I'm learning some legalese from you here, we put may in there, right? So it wasn't a hard and fast, would be 3 credits, right?
Correct.
So that was very deliberate effort. I don't know if you guys talked about that last meeting. And another piece we put in here with the early graduation, this is also 6146E, that, when we actually heard in the presentation tonight that one of the ESS students was graduating early, but by our policy, a student could only graduate early in 7 semesters in high school. But the thought being, if we have the opportunity and there are those additional credits, and you've got the flexibility in how credits are granted, maybe even some online learning, that we could have students graduating in 6 semesters. I'm right with you. We sometimes give seniors this free pass before they're going to have some of the hardest and most challenging work to do. Let's say post-secondary, we're just, take a little bit of breather, So, we were somewhat intentional in saying, well, there could be an opportunity for students to get that number of credits, the 25 credits, in a 3-year period, and since the 6 semesters.
And we could also play with that wording and say no more than up to, it's up to the board to decide what they'd like to do, and if they even want to move that forward at all. That's complete board discretion about offering middle school credit. High school credit at the middle school.
Am I next? Yeah. Can I go back? Without could you give me a succinct thought process on behind giving the up to 3 credits?
Yes, well, currently we offer Algebra 1 to students at the middle school who are on basically an honors track. It's Honors Algebra 1. It's a very difficult course. It's the same course that's offered at the high school. The same is true of French, A and B. They're split in the 7th and 8th grade year. Spanish, A and B, so you can get a full credit in world language, a full credit in Algebra 1, and as Mr. Shem mentioned, if you get to Geometry 2 Honors, which students are taking the exact same course as they are at the high school, you'd be able to offer credit for that as well. We were looking, if that were to go into effect, and one of the things I did share with Mr. Lawson is, I would like to see if there are opportunities at the middle school to afford the offering of world language to all students and not just some students, which would then alleviate some of the burden that's now placed on the high school, where there are students that come to the high school with little or no experience in a world language, and then they're taking it for the first time, making us having to staff up at the high school in order to meet those kids' needs so that they can graduate with the credit in world language. That's now required under this new law. So it's something to consider. That's the concise version of course offerings. And we also said at least a B- as a passing score in the course we're proposing in order to have them move forward with the credit.
I don't mind the long version. I just don't want to
I got
put
you.
John all night.
I appreciate that.
All right, we'll discuss it again next round, subcommittee.
Please.
I
I'll come back to you, okay? Tammy,
Yeah, well,
Tammy, then Angie.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of disagree a little bit about people not feeling uncomfortable with moving middle school credits up, and this is why. We have 62, I think, students in 7th grade right now taking Honors Algebra 1. This is the same exact course that they would have taken in 9th grade had they taken it at the high school. There is a high level of rigor. They have to take the same exams as they would in high school. All of these kids are going to move up to Geometry 1 Honors in 8th grade, and I'm sure the majority of these kids are also taking a foreign language. These are the kids who are going to want to go on and explore a lot of opportunities at the high school, and while I know that offering more classes adds to the budgetary issues that we have, we should be allowing this to happen. We should be allowing them to transfer these credits up. These kids are most likely not going to skip out on classes towards the end of the year. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Senioritis.
Maybe I'm wrong. I will say that what is the benefit of these kids doing this in middle school if they could just wait to do it in high school? I mean, we're giving these kids an opportunity to do this, and I think they should be receiving credit for it. So I'm not as concerned about that. If it was a different class, if they weren't, if it wasn't judged by the same standards, I would say, all right, we need to talk about it. But it is judged by the same exact standards. So why they would get it in 9th grade but can't get it in 7th grade, I just don't understand that logic. So.
Angie?
I wasn't able to get here in time for the previous meeting, but I'm sure one of the things that was mentioned, because every time special ed comes up, we talk about the increase in anxiety in children. So I'm sure that was in some way, shape, or form mentioned.
You're
So
right.
why are we going to add more anxiety to our junior high students, which is our most volatile grades, probably arguably, by having them already take high school classes? Whether it's the same rigor or not. You haven't had a child go through high school yet. The kids are very anxious. So now we're moving that anxiety down to junior high. Not only that, we're not beefing up any offerings at the high school. So I finished now 7 semesters. I don't really have a job. I'm going to go to college. I'm just going to hang out. I really have an issue with that. I think we're not only doing a disservice to the students, but I think we're doing a disservice to the town. And I don't think it's right. I don't see anything at the high school that we're adding courses or anything like that. This isn't saving us any money to do anything different, and I just have a real issue with it. And, clearly the consensus is it's great and wonderful, and I'll vote against it, and it is what it is. But I think we're adding a lot of issues that we don't need to add to students and families and parents and the town.
Can I just respond just this? Do you mind? It's just because
Well,
it's directed at this.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's about the policy.
Make
right?
it about the
is,
policy.
yeah, it is
and
about
we're
the
okay.
policy. These kids are already taking this class. Are we saying that we don't want them to take the class anymore? I mean, they're already
No, I have
in
no
it, so
issue
if
with
they're-
you taking the
It's not the
class.
class.
It's
No,
the
it's the-
giving of the credit.
It's
the
not the
high school
class.
credit in the junior high class.
Why does that add more anxiety onto it?
Because now you got GPA. Kids figure their GPA during lunch hours. I mean, kids literally sit and figure their GPAs to see who's gonna, I mean, it's like a race. I've seen it happen. And now now they're bringing up this junior high credit. It's just it's something I don't think we should do.
Okay, just, if
That's
I
my
could-
opinion.
Mr. Shagru, I'm not sure if you're prepared to speak, but some of these concerns.
I've been prepared for the last couple meetings, absolutely, I appreciate it.
Well, if you could, I think we're kind of spinning our wheels here, and the high school seems to be where it's
A
at.
couple of things, and I can appreciate the conversation, but it doesn't count, these courses do not count towards GPA, they just count towards the total. And again, it's at the purview of the Committee on Learning. You know, we went back there for a second bite at the apple. If it's to this committee's liking, it's merely a proposal, and if we're getting stuck and hung up on that, let's remove it. I mean, if we're going to spin our wheels on that, you have the data. Not every district around is doing that. Many other districts are still trying to dip their toes in the water, whether they're going to go down that road. But if we're fundamentally opposed, let's strike it. I mean, that's not the hill I want to die on.
Please don't feel the pressure to do it. It's merely a proposal because it's an option in the state legislation right now.
And that's how that came about, because I think the conversation, just so everyone here is aware,
That's right.
the very first meeting at Committee on Learning, when we sat there, I think you both were extremely honest in the way of, listen, this came on fast, and we're doing the best we can, and we're just bringing it forward. So there's a lot involved here. And so I wanted
And
to
the
just be
status
clear
of
on that.
this isn't official yet.
That's correct.
It is
And
not.
I
It
think
is
that-
not.
And that's something that we need to consider as well. And, Joe, did you have another?
Round, yeah, I thought it was loud, I'm sorry. The overall, I'll repeat myself here, the overall change in the graduation requirements in the different areas of study, I think is incredible. I think we have to move with the times. I think the Board of Ed here in the Milford gets ahead of the curve often with these changes, and that's a really good thing. But there's some things that we just might have some hesitation on, and that being one of them. In given age, and probably there's a lot of people that can speak better to this than I can, given the age of 8th grade and the stress and the maturity level, some of those kids are taking those courses, I'll give you that. But if we put in that you can transfer 3, then we're setting a mindset where you're going to have to take these 3 difficult courses at a difficult phase in maturity level to get into high school. And then I am overly concerned about this last semester right here. And I'm sorry, I call them semesters, and I'll never get out of that mindset, but we know what we're talking about here for the spring. We will have how many students just not showing up that last year. And I personally think getting out of school after 3 hours or a day, and I have it from personal experience, I mean, if you met the requirements, I'm there. I have difficulty with it, but you hope you raise children to use their heads when they're not in school and go out and work or do volunteer or work with organizations, and they're trying to progress themselves, getting into next September when it's a whole different ballgame for all of them. I think sometimes we miss out on that maturity level. Some people have children that won't have any issue for it, but we have to look at it for the overall. And then what's the budget issues? If we have how many students do we have in 12th grade right now?
Well, I was going to give them a chance to respond to everything at once.
Huh?
About 298.
Right.
Mr. Shagru wanted.
What if I'll throw a hypothetical. What if we got, I don't know, 50, 60, 75 of them not showing up in a whole second semester? We have teachers sitting around with nothing to do.
Quite frankly, I think that's not where this is intended. Those kids, the high flyers, they're taking, the student that takes the geometry in the 8th grade is taking the BC calculus their senior year. They're taking Spanish 5 AP. they're taking French AP. You know, those are the students. Quite frankly, here's the numbers I was working on schedule before we came here. You know, because of our shift in our focus in math, in particular, for the last couple of years prior to this year, we were not able to offer BC Calculus, the highest course that that you can take really to this point. This year we were able to run a course with 5. Next year, because of the students that are on this higher track, we have 16 students tracked into that course for next year. So those are the students that are here. I mean, the elephant in the room, and we mentioned this in the Committee on Learning, is, you know, we require our seniors to take at least 5 credits. You know, we have a $600,000 cut here. I mean, you want more classes, that comes with more bodies. I mean, there's no other way to shape that, and we cut our budget every year. You take a look at the data that Dr. Tracy presented in his presentation back in January. For the last, I don't know, a decade that I've been here, plus, we've been working on a budget that's probably near 1% or less. So for me to come and present opportunities, I'm not disagreeing with any of the comments that are made here today, that we should be offering more courses to our students. But that comes with a price tag, and we get budgets that the superintendent has presented for the decade plus here that's been cut at the board level and then further diced at the town council committee. So these are real, that's the elephant in the room. You want more teachers, you want more classes, exciting things. I'd love to offer that. You know, we're talking about possibly doing robotics and other exciting things. That's coming with a price tag. That's the bottom line. But like I said earlier, if the hang up is with the middle school credit, I suggest we strike it. I really do. Because it's merely meant, we put it in there when Alicia and I sat and we crafted this proposal. We sat down and read the briefs from CAPS, and we talked about the possibilities and what the board has the purview of doing. If you are not in favor of that, strike it. I hope you like. I appreciate the fact that you like the other parts when we're talking about pathways and such. Then let's move on.
Okay, Ryan.
I just appreciate both sides of this argument because I really was leaning strongly towards the middle school credits. I think it does open opportunities for students when they get to their senior year. And I hadn't really seen the other side of the argument until tonight, so I just appreciate hearing both sides of it. And I'll think heavily about it, and I think we all need to talk about this or think about this. I don't know.
Well, another unfunded mandate, let's just put it that way.
Well, we don't know.
Any other questions or comments? And of course,
Just for clarification, this will be coming for policy for,
correct.
and then because it'll go to policy for the final conversation, there'll be a recommendation from the policy committee to send to the
Correct.
board a final policy.
Absolutely.
Just so board members know, in case you're not on policy, you obviously don't lose your opportunity to vote.
And those following by the numbers, this moves us from 26 required to 25 for the class of 2023, which are the incoming 8th graders. So I think that's important for the larger community to know.
Can you repeat that so everybody can?
Oh, sorry, did I mumble that?
Yes.
This would move us from 26 credits as the requirement right now for all classes that are currently at the high school, and this would move us to 25 credits for the incoming class of 2023.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, and one of those is a mastery-based learning credit.
That's a whole other story, but yes.
Because then the argument is it's really 24,
Right.
It's really 24 credits.
Correct.
Which is, for some board members who have been here a while, I feel like the dinosaur saying that so many times. It's a large shift from when we moved to 26 credits. And that conversation took us a much longer time, and not that the time frame gauges the success, but I think it's really important. And so I do appreciate it when this first came to policy. I literally jumped out of my seat and said, whoa, everybody really read through what we're thinking of doing here. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Moving on for items for information and discussion. Field trip report. The school calendar.
Just a brief comment, if I might, Mr. Chairman, on the school calendar. My understanding is that in this community, the Board of Education does not formally vote to adopt the calendar.
Correct.
So you saw at a previous meeting the key dates upon which this calendar is built. And so it's my intention, unless there's any further guidance from the board, to publish this calendar tomorrow as our calendar for next year. It basically parallels the student day and teacher day arrangement that you had in force this year, simply adjusting it into, next year's days of the week. So
Thank you.
if there's no further discussion or direction, this is what will go forth to the faculty and the parents.
And insurance update.
I had asked for it to be on the agenda, so, we're basically,
I think I kind of covered it. We're still wrapping things up
we're
with that.
working,
We're wrapping that up. We have a few negotiations, as you know.
as you know,
Yep.
this town, we had a meeting right here in this room, with two other bodies.
Yeah, we're still,
We're getting there, we're confident we'll get there, and
it's crossing the Ts and dotting the Is at this point, and just getting things in order.
however, there's also a component of that, that's true.
There's one that needs to be clarified, yes.
Well, just briefly on the insurance piece, as we watch and we head into, our next fiscal season, we always look for any savings wherever we can get it,
Right.
any line item, and that's one of them. And so we'll be watching those numbers as well, because that's a component of our budget.
Well, one of the things I think all the members of the board need to know, one of the things we're trying to clarify is how much money is in the internal service fund. Because with the new contract, that will still be a medical fund and perhaps used for other medical issues. Thing is, how much is in it? And we're still trying to clarify that point and how that's working. So that's one thing we definitely need to know so that we can move forward with everything.
We've also built our budget on the numbers provided by the
Correct.
town and the actuary. We're pretty confident that those numbers are, as of now, going to
They're gonna
be
hold,
close.
yeah.
They're going to hold, and if they change, obviously if they change to the good, that'll be the first amendment this board will make when we adjust our budget, that line item. So I just wanted to have that conversation. It's been a long process. It's been a 2-year process, and we're getting to the end of the wire. And since we've built our budget on that piece, we're pretty comfortable
Well, I
that we're
think
going
with
to
our,
get there.
and again, with our budget, the savings is quite substantial.
With our budget, we have still a increase in our insurance line. However, we have a cost avoidance that is significantly less than what we would have paid had we, used a
Stayed with
different
the-
number.
yeah.
Did you want to speak to that, Anthony, or I don't want to put you on the spot?
No,
We're good.
we're good there. Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, at this point, I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well, now it's
I
quick,
knew it.
now it's
Everybody wants
quick.
to-
Any discussion? Those in favor? Anybody abstaining?
I was hoping for the long version, but we'll wait till next time.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.